Hello, everyone. My name is Jim Garrison. I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising as we return once again to the overriding issue of disclosure of the UFO, UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomena domain that is beginning to reverberate through the global consciousness. And today, we want to take up an issue that we've not yet delved into on Humanity Rising, and that is public and popular perceptions of this issue. We've been focusing on the legislation in the US Congress. We've been focusing on the various specialists like Danny Sheehan and Richard Dolan and Steve Bassett and others who've been at the forefront of working over decades now for disclosure of this very important domain in human history and human consciousness. But we need to all realize that we've been, in some ways, in a bubble because while we've been focusing on the extraordinary hearings, for example, last July in Washington in the U.S. House Government Oversight Committee, where David Grush, a senior intelligence official, for the first time stated categorically that yes, the U.S. government does have retrieved alien craft, and yes, the U.S. government does have what he called biologics, extraterrestrial biological entities. 99.9% of the public didn't even know it happened and still don't know it happened. So we're in one of those extraordinarily complex and nuanced moments where disclosure is happening and the government that for the last 80 years has done everything it can and could to obfuscate the issue, to cover up the issue, to hold it completely secret, and working through the Central Intelligence Agency to mount a press campaign over decades of time to so marginalize and trivialize the UFO UAP issue that even to talk about it was to invite ridicule and marginalization. And in fact, right now, legislation is being considered for vote later on this year, submitted just a few days ago by the House of Representatives to empower for the first time civilian pilots who witness UFOs while they're flying to report this to the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA. And a specific aspect of this proposed law will protect pilots from either being fired or demoted or in any other way persecuted because they're reporting UFOs. That's how tightly this information has been held and how successfully the marginalization of the UFO UAP issue has been mounted in the public domain, such that even professional pilots in the military and certainly in the civilian sector have been afraid to even report sightings because of potential damage to their careers. So we're in that moment when a mountain is not a mountain, as the Zen Buddhists say, and we're working on the mountain becoming a mountain, but it is not yet so. And so today we want to invite someone who's been studying public perceptions, Tom Curren, who's a former naval officer, who received his MBA from the Wharton School of Business, one of the preeminent business schools in the world, who spent time at McKinsey Company as a consultant, and now has set up his own consulting firm after a very successful both naval and business consulting career, serving as senior vice president, for example, for Marriott Hotels International. And recently I came across Tom's work, and I was very intrigued. So we reached out to him and invited him to join us today to share with us some contextual perspectives on public understanding about the UFO UAP issue. So Tom, I want to invite you to our program to turn on your video and take yourself off mute. And Tom is going to make some introductory remarks and then show a PowerPoint, which is very illuminating about some of the complexities and implications of what's now happening in the global public domain about this very important issue. So Tom, welcome.
Thanks, Jim. I've been looking forward to this. This is an important subject for me. I've been in the bubble, but most of my friends and family are not in the bubble, and they don't want to be told what to think. And so I've learned and oriented this discussion to going back to kind of ground zero and, why should you even consider this? And isn't this another conspiracy theory? So I want to say thank you for previewing that background. I want to say I've always worked at the top of organizations to help them make better decisions, rational decisions with immediate short-term impact. And I'm still doing that now. I'm active in the political sphere, working with large donors on nonpartisan structural reform, changing incentives of the system. So I say all this to say I'm kind of a grounded, practical guy that's been paid to focus on short-term results. I also believe it's important to spend some time stepping back and looking at the bigger picture. And if we look at the bigger picture, I think humanity's in for a pretty rough ride. And I hope we can muddle through, but I think it's even more likely that we're going to have a series of cascading crises. And my hope that within that, it's not just a downward spiral, but it's the seeds for some kind of a transformational shift, humanity rising, if you will. So that's my hope. And what I've found is that by engaging in research around some of these what-if scenarios, well, what if there actually was formal disclosure about the presence of non-human technology and non-human intelligence on planet Earth? What would be the implications of that? So that's the project we launched with my two colleagues, Roger Stack and Sabina Spencer. And I want to include the results of that finding in the research because it confirmed what I've found by looking into this, which is when you actually look at the implications, it kind of gives me a more positive, optimistic stance. And importantly, more than a dozen things that I now am holding in my mind that I say, yeah, this would be really good. This would be really good. So rather than kind of contract around fear, I am actually in a much more optimistic place. So I'd like to share a presentation I created for us a couple of days ago, and then that will include the research and how I propose to frame this issue for those that are outside the bubble and really not only are dismissive, but they just don't even want to talk about it. So Let's see if I can share screen. And find the video. Hold on. Okay, here it is. I have a lot of friends and family members who are totally dismissive of all this talk about UFOs.
Tom,
They
we're only
tell me
getting
they'll believe it when they
in
see the.
in the upper left. Can you make it full
Yeah,
screen somehow?
yeah. Okay, here we go. High resolution
How's that?
pictures, or one lands on the White House lawn.
There we
And
go.
I understand this. There's been decades of ridicule around this subject. There's more and more deep fakes and misinformation. And honestly, don't we have enough to worry about in the world today? And yet something's going on because this topic gets more and more coverage in the news. So if you were to look into it, where would you even start? I'm Tom Curran. I'm a business guy and a Navy veteran who's researched this issue for the past 5 years. Let's start by looking at some terminology, because, as it turns out, that's really the critical starting place for framing the issues. We're all familiar with the term UFO, even though that literally means something that can't be identified flying around in the sky. Most of us associate that with ETs, those strange beings that come from another galaxy far, far away and have been depicted in different ways in numerous books and movies over the last 50 years. You may have noticed that the Department of Defense, intelligence community, and the U.S. Congress have adopted a strange new term to replace UFOs. It's called UAPs, and initially that meant unidentified aerial phenomena. One reason the new terminology was adopted was to lessen the association with the little green men and get back to the core idea of something flying around that's not identified. When we say not identified, we're not talking about the 90% plus of all the things that initially seem mysterious, but then turn out to be Venus or the International Space Station, a lens flare on the camera. These events are the true anomalies that have defined scientific analysis. So they are unidentified in that sense, and they are aerial because they are in our atmosphere, and they are called phenomena because they are events or happenings. If you dig into this, you'll discover that there are many seemingly reliable reports of such objects appearing and disappearing from visual observation and radar tracks. So, quote, phenomena might be a better term than object in the traditional sense of that word. There's one more interesting shift. In July 2022, the Department of Defense modified the term UAP to be a designation for anomalous phenomena instead of aerial phenomena. This is because the accumulation of seemingly reliable data that these objects operate freely in the air and underwater, and of course in outer space. The technical term the Pentagon uses for this is transmedium. Well, what about the term ET? The updated terminology is non-human intelligence, or NHI. Why is this shift important? Because it is a transition from what they are, extraterrestrials, to what they are not. They are not man-made. They represent some kind of intelligence that is not human. What they actually are is anybody's guess at this point. ETs, intelligence from another dimension, time-traveling humans from the future, some advanced AI hybrids, All of the above? None of the above? So when the Pentagon says, quote, "We have no evidence of ETs," close quote, what they're leaving unsaid is, "But we do have evidence of technology and phenomena that are not man-made." It's kind of a legal speak. Finally, the cultural spotlight in media reporting is currently on UAPs, as investigated by the DoD intelligence community and Congress, with national security and aviation safety being the rationale. However, underneath this surface are decades of reports by tens of thousands of individuals who have had some type of contact experience or encounter with non-human intelligence. Some of these claims involve abductions into alien craft, and within this group, some report medical examinations. As an aside, you may have heard the classic joke, are we really expected to believe that some alien civilizations would somehow travel thousands of light years just to abduct some human and give them an anal exam? The contact phenomena is well documented. If you give it any credence, you find that abductions to spacecraft comprise a minority of the reporting. Yes, there are reports of various types of ETs, most frequently the classic grays with the big oval eyes. But many reports of encounters are with balls of light or orbs. Perhaps the broadest term, therefore, we can apply to this type of data is simply paranormal. What all of this implies is that there is a flood of reports that make claims about things that are not normal, not aligned with the consensus view of reality. We are not sure what they are, but the claim is that they are not human, not currently identifiable, and non-normal. Ever since the December 2017 New York Times cover story about the government's ongoing secret study of UAPs and the release of 3 F-18 gun camera videos confirmed by the Pentagon as legitimate, momentum has been building and the stigma fading around this once taboo topic. More organizations are forming and more people are getting involved and speaking on the record in what may prove to be a historic conversation. My colleague, Sean Esborn-Hargens, has been tracking these events. A list is provided in the chat. The number of events has doubled every year or so. The 84, quote, key events last year included retired military and intelligence personnel speaking out, congressional actions, reports from the Pentagon and NASA, new studies, new organizations created by the UN, France, and Canada, and perhaps most amazing development centered on the testimony that the U.S. had recovered UAP craft and has been working for decades to reverse engineer the technology. It's hard to say where this will head in 2024. Perhaps there will be explosive hearings in the Senate Intelligence Committee, or maybe the momentum will simply build steadily toward greater disclosure and engagement on these issues. The UAP toothpaste appears to have been squeezed out of the tube, and there's no putting it back. Despite all this momentum, the UAP skeptics have a seemingly valid point. Where are the high-resolution pictures? We all have smartphones. Why haven't these UFOs, ETs landed on the White House lawn? And, since nothing can travel faster than the speed of light, would it take an impossibly long time for another civilization to reach our planet from another galaxy? These are valid issues. However, this attitude focuses on the evidence we don't have and generally sidesteps the body of evidence we do have. I think of it like a murder trial, where there's no body that's been recovered, but there is DNA evidence, eyewitness testimony, and motive. If you can't get past the fact that the prosecution has no body, you'll tend to disregard all the other evidence, no matter how persuasive. Skeptics often cite Occam's razor to the effect that the simplest explanation is usually the most likely. For example, isn't the simplest explanation that these UAPs are some natural phenomena, or perhaps some black ops program by our government or the Russian or Chinese? How could the government keep recovered craft a secret for decades? Isn't the simplest explanation a straightforward conspiracy theory? What about New Age delusion, hoaxes, and technological fantasies? And isn't the simplest explanation that these so-called, quote, contact experiences are the reports of some sincere but unstable individuals? However, we need to recognize that the true interpretation of Occam's razor is the simplest explanation that fits all the evidence, not just some of the evidence. Well, what about all the evidence? What is it? What is plausible? What is unlikely? What is even absurd? Lawrence Peter, of the famous Peter Principle, observed that, quote, some problems are so complex that you have to be well informed just to be undecided. Rather than applying a simple true/false approach, a bit more nuance might be called for here. You deciding for yourself the level of plausibility for a given set of claims. We recently conducted some research on the potential implications of an official disclosure of NHI technology on planet Earth. We used a 5-point scale ranging from very unlikely to virtually certain. From this research, we discovered that it mattered a lot how much you knew about the whole UAP NHI field. Based upon an open text word cloud, those who reported that they knew less characterized their reaction to UAP disclosure as uncertain, fearful, scary, chaotic, with a small bit of hope and opportunity thrown into the mix. On the other hand, those who reported that they knew more about the phenomena viewed disclosure as transformational, technologically rich, hopeful, enlightening, exciting, evolutionary, with some acknowledgement of the shock and chaos involved. Clearly, these are quite distinct profiles. Let's look at these survey findings a bit more closely. My co-author Roger Stack narrates a 6-minute overview of the results of this research.
What if the United States President and world leaders disclosed the presence of non-human intelligence and technology on planet Earth? Hi, my name's Roger Stack, and I'm part of an international team exploring the potential implications of an official disclosure of unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAP. We recently asked over 400 people, mostly in the US, to react to a wide range of potential implications of disclosure. Within this group were 73 people who said they knew less about UFO and extraterrestrials than the average person. After outlining 44 potential implications of official disclosure, we asked them what they thought. The top responses were the words uncertainty and fear, then scary, chaos, a bit of hope and opportunity, followed by caution, skepticism, and disbelief. We then asked a group of 74 people who claimed they followed these topics closely. Transformational first and foremost, then technology, then hope, potential, enlightenment, evolution and exciting, and yes, also some shock and chaos. Clearly, these were very different perspectives of disclosure. Just as striking were the ways these two groups responded to specific potential implications of a formal disclosure. For the no less group, not a single implication of disclosure was seen as positive, and 2 implications were assessed as negative. The first negative was disinformation and hoaxes leading to further confusion. No connection to everyday lives, scepticism towards government, and fatigue with global crises were the reasons for the second negative of public disengagement. The no more group believed 18 implications were positive and saw 4 implications of disclosure as negative. The positive implications of disclosure ranged across 4 areas: a shift in global awareness, deeper engagement with NHI, boost to science and technology, and expanded sensing and consciousness. A shift in global awareness was about 3 things: a "we are not alone" narrative uniting people, take care of the planet messages from NHI, and humanity exploring its deeper purpose. Deeper engagement with NHI was about the UFO ET taboo quickly fading, acceptance of abduction experiences, humans expanding their contact with NHI, and NHI becoming more visibly present. Boosting science and technology was about increased investment in STEM and a huge investment in UAP-related technology. Expanded sensing and consciousness was about expanded human sensing, for example remote viewing, and Psi goes mainstream, for example telepathy, recognition of interdimensional realities, and integration of indigenous beliefs. The No More group assessed 4 implications as negative. The first 2 were the same as the No Less group. Then NHA contact being demonised by religious extremism, and UAP technology turning out to be beyond human understanding. The No More group indicated a number of uncertainties: NHI intentions and capabilities, the national security state agenda, advanced ancient civilizations being reconsidered, renewed interest in nuclear disarmament, unknown cultural dynamics, economic uncertainties. The purpose of this report is to introduce some potential implications of the disclosure of UFO, UAP and non-human intelligences on our everyday lives, to provide links to credible information for those wanting to know more, and to encourage discerning dialogue and engagement to help shape a more positive post-disclosure world. Download the free report for an analysis of all 434 responses to the survey and a short list of credible UAP websites, documentaries and books. See the direct download link in the description under this video. Some terms used in this video: anomalous, outside what is expected, such as a particular worldview; disclosure, making new or secret information known; extraterrestrial, intelligence or technology not originating from Earth; NHI, non-human intelligence; Psi, paranormal or parapsychological capabilities, such as telepathy; STEM, science, technology, engineering and mathematics; UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomena; UFO, unidentified flying object.
So the research indicates that more knowledge implies less fear and more possibility. This begs the question, yes, but do I even want to invest my time looking into this? I know that there are plenty things that I consider, just on the face of them, to be conspiracy theories, and I haven't wasted any time with these. The Flat Earth Society is an obvious example. Yes, there are still people who believe the Earth is flat and would like you to listen to their arguments. The 9/11 conspiracy theory is another one that I have not spent much time with. But I do know there are people who want to discuss the evidence that it was an inside job. They ask things like, why were those F-15 fighters not in the New York City airspace on the day of the attack? That type of thing. However, just because something is unorthodox doesn't mean it's wrong. We don't need to go back as far as the 16th century with Copernicus's heretical claim that the Earth was not the center of the universe. Continental drift was considered impossible just 100 years ago. How could something so solid as a continent move around? It makes no sense. Yet here we are with plate tectonics from the 1960s and widespread acceptance by the 1970s. The good news in all of this is that there is some solid information out there among the sea of misinformation and sloppy reporting. By solid, I mean worthy of your consideration. Not that I want to tell you what to believe. I mean some well-organized, accessible information that has some degree of plausibility. We would like to draw your attention to 2 websites, 4 documentaries, and 5 books. You could pick and choose among these as your interest dictates. Links are provided in the chat. Let's do a quick overview. 2 years ago, my partner Sean and I created the website What's Up with UFOs to provide a broad and accessible compendium of all aspects of the UAP phenomena. Sean spent about 500 hours sourcing material, and I spent another 500 hours packaging it and editing it into something that's easy to access and to navigate. Although not capturing all of the events of the last 24 months, it still offers a valuable starting place for any exploration. There are about 150 pieces of content on the site, half of them video clips and half of them extracts from articles. About 50% of all this material takes less than 5 minutes to read or watch. So investing an hour of your time would allow you to cover a lot of ground. The material on the What's Up with UFO site is organized into 4 overall categories: flying objects, hard science, direct experience, and institutional dynamics. Here's an example of the content links in the flying objects section. This is drawn from the Lightning Overview feature on the home page of the site. The first topical heading is, "Do we really need to take UFOs seriously?" and it contains hot links to 7 pieces of content on the site. Another section, circled in red, is organized under the heading, "Evidence shows that some UFOs can also operate underwater," and so forth. If you go to the site, you will note an invitation to rate the credibility of the content. We have thousands of ratings on the credibility of this material. These ratings pretty much follow the patterns you might expect. Navy pilots capturing objects on their gun camera videos, generally seen as valid or highly plausible. At the other extreme, a young woman discussing what she believes to be her role in a hybridization program. This is about as far out as we get on the site, by the way. Most readers will say this claim is very unlikely or even absurd. The second recommended website is much more focused and current. It's the home of the New Paradigm Institute founded by attorney Danny Sheehan. Here you will find the latest updates on disclosure activities within the U.S. Congress and ways to take meaningful political action. It's not surprising that the number and quality of documentaries entering this space is increasing in response to heightened public interest. Here are 4 we recommend. The Phenomena in 2020, one of the best overviews of the 70-year history of unknown flying objects, including the documented interactions with nuclear facilities. Next, Encounters, done in 2023. This is a 4-episode documentary produced by Steven Spielberg. Episode 1 documents UAP sightings seen by hundreds of residents in Stephenville, Texas in 2008. Episode 2 documents the largest UAP sighting in UK history. Episode 3 centers on UAP and orb activity surrounding Fukushima and the nuclear plant disaster there in 2011. The final episode documents the aerial school phenomena in South Africa, where over 60 kids had close encounters with small humanoid figures. This is considered by many to be one of the most significant close-up contact experiences of the 20th century. The third documentary is Moment of Contact, released in 2023. This investigates a series of events in 1996 when the citizens of Brazil reported seeing one or more strange creatures and a UFO crash. Unlike the other documentaries, which provide an overview of multiple events, this film focuses on the specific claims of alien interaction and recovery. And finally, we have the David Grosh conversation with Jesse Michaels, 2023, available on YouTube. This documentary begins with excerpts of whistleblower David Grosh's testimony before Congress in July 2023 concerning the Department of Defense and military contractor possession of retrieved UAP craft and bodies. It then discusses the connections between the secrecy of the Manhattan Project, the Atomic Energy Act, and the UFO cover-ups. It documents extensive anti-gravity research conducted in the 50s that was suddenly terminated or went dark. It speculates on the physics behind time travel and the possibilities that ETs may be human from the future. The number of books published in this field can seem overwhelming. Here are 5 excellent titles to cover different aspects of the phenomena. UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials Go on the Record. Leslie Kean, 2010. This is a basic history of the key events up to that time, with many of the chapters written by the individuals directly involved. Next, we have Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, an insider's account of the secret government UFO program. published in 2021. Millions of dollars were spent by the Pentagon to scientifically document a series of paranormal events at the Skinwalker Ranch in Utah. This account describes the results of these efforts. In Plain Sight, a comprehensive up-to-date investigation into UFOs and impossible science. Ross Coulthart, 2021. Another good overview. UFOs for the 21st Century Mind, the definitive guide to the UFO mystery. Richard Dolan did this in 2022 and provides the broad perspective of a UFO historian. And finally, we have Encounters, Experiences in Non-Human Intelligence, Explorations with UFOs, Dreams, Angels, and AI, and Other Dimensions by Diana Pasulka, just published in the fall 2023. Well, what might we conclude from all this? First, knowledge of UAP NHI appears to matter a lot. As we've seen, those who consider themselves well informed on this topic assessed a wider range of possible potential implications as more likely and on balance more positive than those who reported that they knew little about this field. The Know More group are more excited and engaged in the potential for transformational reform than any of the other groups or demographic crosscuts we analyzed. Secondly, UAP and NHI pose challenges to our very core notions of reality. The potential implications of disclosure of non-human intelligence and technology may continue to unfold in a long, complicated, and messy process, perhaps for decades. It's worth noting that it took 150 years from the publication of Copernicus's work to gain acceptance of the heliocentric model that asserts the sun is the center of the universe. Today, paradigms may change more quickly, but there's an added twist to this UAP NHI topic. Whereas Copernicus was proposing a single definitive shift, the complexity of the UAP phenomena confronts us with a deeper set of challenges to our core notions of reality. For example, what it means to be human, the sovereignty of the nation state, the authority of religions, the range of species involved and their motivations, the possible presence of hybrids on our planet, a likely upheaval in the sciences, including free energy, anti-gravity, wormholes, and even the possible discovery of long-standing collaboration between rogue elements in the military-industrial complex and certain non-human species. Finally, don't be caught off guard by the sudden tipping point in disclosure. As we've seen, occasional leaks of information have become a virtual flood. It's unlikely that we can turn back. For many, this may continue to seem like a distant and remote issue until it suddenly doesn't. I'm Tom Curran, and I'd be happy to get your thoughts about any of this material. I'll put my email in the chat. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for that, Tom. That was magnificent. That was magnificent. And it opened up for our community a lot of new information. And so I just want to acknowledge that and thank you for it. And I thought the best place to begin would be for you to share your story. How did a naval officer, McKinsey guy, get involved with UFOs and to do it with such an extraordinarily intellectual integrity, partner with people like Sean Esborn Hargan, an old friend of mine, and so forth. So tell us your story.
Sure. Well, when Leslie Kean came out with her book, and I'm always kind of interested in big picture and paradigm shifts in corporate and organizational work. There's, a lot of paradigm shifts, giving more credence to behavior changes rather than just think the organization's a machine. So when Leslie came out with her book in 2010, I reached out to her and got involved and she had a meeting in Washington that I helped her design and facilitate, where she brought in all the heads of the people that wrote the various chapters. So that was one thing. I haven't had a direct experience, contact experience, but I have, as part of my consciousness research, had a number of paranormal things, and have immersed myself in various laboratories to explore expanded human sensing. Both my brother and my sister also have had contact experiences, so that was, which I could describe, but that was part of the background. And then, since you know Sean, when Sean came out of the closet, so to speak, 5 years ago, he's very active in the integral community, and he started going public in this. And he was amazed that, people started saying, well, yeah, I had a contact experience, or yeah, I think that, so we broke the taboo. So starting 5 years ago, when Sean and I partnered on Sean is like the big picture guy. His idea of a simple reading list is 150 books. I also, in part of my background, I was a madman advertising executive in New York. And so my focus and skill is in packaging information, making it concise and accessible, with our reduced attention spans. So I would say that's, part of the background of this. And once you get into it, it develops its own momentum, because it's just the trap door just keeps falling out and falling out and falling out. And it's just an endless exploration.
Yes, yes. And once you get it, it changes everything, and there's no turning back.
Right.
I've had a number of people, including myself, as I've been getting more and more deeply immersed, you begin to realize that many of the other issues that seem to be so powerfully important start to take on less significance when you really explore the potential of ET contact. And so thank you for that story. What prompted you to do the study of the 400 people? Tell us more about that study, because it's very interesting that people's appreciation of the UAP domain is directly proportional to how much they know. That's very interesting. And what I'd like to have you explore, in addition to that, is the polling that simultaneously has been revealed over the decades, that the vast majority of the American public and the European public believe that they're real.
Right.
So how do you square those different data points?
Yeah, I mean, these days more people say they believe in UFOs than God. So, some of the estimates you're probably familiar with is there's not tens of thousands of abductees. It might be over 10 million from the letters that, from the various research. So, going back to the survey, so the middle of last summer, when we were talking about disclosure and reading the work that had been done on disclosure, like Dolan's book, AD After Disclosure, we didn't think it was comprehensive enough and current enough. And I'd been certified in a technique called implication mapping, where anyway, in my corporate work, I've done some kind of futurist work like this. And so we decided to systematically explore it. And the early stage, we brainstormed 117. So we surveyed 44, but in the appendix to the report, there's 117 potential implications. It's just, mind-boggling. And this list was generated by scrubbing Bassett and Dolan and, all the people that have written and done podcasts on this, as well as a few focus groups among our community, the Sean's Exo Studies community. And from that, we did a preliminary research stage where we asked, of the 117, what do you think the 10 most significant positives are and negatives? And from that, we basically narrowed it down to 44 that we went to a large survey with, and we got like 700 or 800 respondents, both through our network and through SurveyMonkey panel. But many of them, we wanted reliable data, so we had to scrub a lot of the data because some people completed the survey too quickly to really be meaningful, or they had fixed responses or whatever. So we really worked hard to get a valid data set down to the 734. We had no idea that the level of knowledge would be the determining characteristic. It turns male versus female is not a big deal. It turns out that generations, boomers versus XYZ, is not a big deal. We don't really have enough from it's mostly U.S., so we don't have a large enough sample in Mexico and UK. So the knowledge emerged as the primary differentiator, and so that was kind of exciting because that has some implications.
Right.
As for squaring I can't say. I think general belief, it's just like a vague concept out there. It's not operational, it's not salient, it's not urgent. But when you get specific, like, okay, integration of indigenous beliefs, or, legitimization of paranormal phenomena, or, then all of a sudden it goes, yeah, that makes sense. And it becomes very real.
Yeah, for sure. And Kurt Krieger had put in the chat while you were speaking about conversations with his son, who was saying that most people under 30 completely take ETs for granted, as it were. And I know that's true of my two sons in their early 30s. When I talk about it, there's no skepticism. So I'm wondering, in your research, have you noted a generational difference of acceptance? Folks like you and I have gone through, the decades of
Right.
CIA manipulation of the media and so forth and so on. We saw what happened with John Mack at Harvard with his study of abductees, etc. Have you noted any generational difference?
So we didn't ask, do you believe in ETs or NFO? What we invited people to do was take a survey under the assumption that, a role play under the assumption that if disclosure happened, what would be the implication, and how likely would be the specific implications, and how credible, how positive or negative would be. So we didn't ask. But because half the people were boomers and half were XYZs, that indicated some level of interest of, even spending time with this topic. But we didn't say, do you believe in it? We just know that the respondents had enough interest to take the survey.
Oh, I see. So
Yeah, this isn't a survey about, do you believe in extraterrestrials? It's a survey of, if the government disclosed, that's the premise, what might be the implications?
Yeah, gotcha. Now let's go back to your term of implication mapping.
Yeah.
That's very intriguing, and you've indicated that you have some expertise in that, having spent time in that domain. Explain to us what is implication mapping?
Sure. It's a complement to scenario planning. So it was invented by Joel Barker. He piloted it at IBM. They used it extensively. So his premise was, you take a central event, like a new strategy or a competitor move or a disclosure, and you create a set of first order implications, which means as a direct result of that, what would happen. And then for each of the first orders, you build out a set of second and third orders. So the way the software works and the process works, so every first order has 5 second orders, and every second order has 5 first orders have 5, and second orders have 5. So you have an arc of about 25 implications, and then you can.
Amazing.
And Joel has found that the interesting stuff happens at the second and third order. So, for example, Fukuyama or something like that, it was very unlikely that there would be an initial breakdown. But if it did happen, there would be cascading failures, or it's unlikely that if Kodak, has an Instamatic camera, that it's going to be left on the package shelf of the car and heat to 120 degrees. But if that does happen, something would happen and then it could blow up in your face. So a lot of the interesting stuff happens in the second and third orders. And so that's what I originally started with. But there were so many first order implications that, we've stopped it there. But we could say, okay, if a first order implication is integration of indigenous beliefs, what would be the set of second and third order implications for that? But the first order implications were so rich that we could kind of stop there. And within that framework, the reason you do that is you want to build bridges to the good stuff and barriers to the bad stuff. And so that's what we're kind of looking for here. What are bridges that could make the positive implications more likely or stronger? And what are the barriers that could make the negatives so forth? So, a lot of the focus right now is on the national security state and disclosure, and we're particularly focusing on the Senate Intelligence Committee hearings and reaching out to Warner and Rubio, and and that's an example of a big leverage point. Another one, if you had a son that was interested in science, you might direct them to what the implications are for the, materials management or psychology or, fringe areas of research that will suddenly become mainstream.
Yes, yes. Now, as you and Sean have looked at implication mapping, in your own way about UAP disclosure, what are your conclusions if you had to offer, say, the top 3 or 4 implications of UAP disclosure in your own mind, having really studied this along with Sean for some time? What would they be?
Well, as somebody that's immersed themselves in kind of experiences in a range of expanded consciousness and so forth, work at the Monroe Institute and even paranormal activity, psychokinesis laboratories in Las Vegas, where we appeared to be able to influence the dice and so forth. Seeing the incredible amount of evidence on remote viewing and how it's dismissed, and some of the other paranormal stuff. I'm very excited about this idea of not only the legitimization of science and academia on paranormal, but the whole idea that as humans, we do have capabilities for expanded human sensing, whether it's something simple like, enhanced intuition, we're much bigger than our senses are now. And, and non-human intelligence, of course, it's all around us now with, if you have a dog,
Totally.
much less a dolphin, there's all kinds of things there. So I think there's opportunity for us to learn their language rather than have us try to teach them their language. And I think that has some implications for other forms of non-human intelligence. So I'm most excited about the whole idea of the science and direct experience of expanded sensing.
Oh, I love that answer, Tom, because as you may know, the New Paradigm Institute has partnered with Ubiquity University to establish an extraterrestrial studies program leading to master's and PhD degrees. And the two questions that we've framed the program around is in the first instance, what are the facts that we can take as given? And Danny Sheehan and Richard Dolan are working on a memo actually of the 100 facts that we in the public domain, based on what we know, can assert is essentially true about the unidentified anomalous phenomena that are now being disclosed. And then the second question and domain is around who the aliens are and how do we communicate with them. So we're partnering with a number of organizations to start teaching remote viewing and psychokinesis and various other intuitive and extrasensory perceptual faculties that we understand based on what we know. One of the facts is that the extraterrestrials communicate through mental telepathy. And there's a lot of information that we know about that. So that's now something that's a given. And so the implication of that is that we humans need to be learning what, I've been calling the mother tongue. And to your point, the mother tongue is really non-human intelligences in the broadest sense of that term, from our dogs and cats to the dolphins, to the plants, to the birds and the bees and the trees, that to the degree to which we can engage in intelligible communication with other sentient beings, we can then communicate with the extraterrestrial presences that are here. And we've actually reached out to Sean and would love to have you involved in some way in this program, because we believe that the principal implication of disclosure, as you're saying, is an upgrading of human consciousness and an awareness that we humans are capable of much more than our five senses.
Absolutely.
Buried in us, and it's been repressed, like they've repressed the UFO information by, the implications of scientific reductionism, to get us to think that consciousness is just an epiphenomenon of the brain, and we are only what we can measure. So part of what's happening with disclosure is that the extraterrestrial phenomenon is really, in some ways, a portal to a whole new understanding of what it means to be human, conscious, and communicative in a world now filled with living intelligences that are not our own. I mean, what would be your general response to that?
Well, that's great. Three things. First, despite what the Pentagon is saying, if you read skinwalkers at the Pentagon, you can see that behind the scenes they're investing tens of millions of dollars to try to track down a range of paranormal phenomena, and it's just not UFOs, it's poltergeist activities and portals. I mean, just so behind the official facade that of scientific materialism, there's all this stuff going on. Secondly, Diane Pasulka in her book has a wonderful, her current book, Encounters, has a wonderful interview with somebody that is working to teach infants a universal language. So working with them, while they're 6 months old. And she said this generation of kids will learn the alphabet, and the next generation of kids will learn the language. And so that work is going on. And thirdly, I'd say there's a collective dimension to this. There's a collective intelligence, with this species, with non-human intelligence. It isn't just individual, but is a collective kind of hive mind, noosphere, et cetera. So as we get more sophisticated, we lose our sense of the distinctness of individuality, and also begin to privilege the collective fields that hold consciousness. So I think that's kind of cool.
That, my friend, is an understatement. Very cool, indeed. Very cool, indeed. It opens up a whole new vista, a whole new era of human possibility and human identity and connectedness with the larger planetary ecosystem and cosmic ecosystem. And the only barrier is what we've imposed on ourselves by our beliefs.
Right. So this is the holding two contradictory ideas. So we do have a cascade series of crises that are think are going to lead to pretty rough times in a lot of ways. And we have this whole other blooming potential that tends to get highlighted when you look at the UAP implications things. There might be other ways to do it, turn to shamanic traditions or whatever. But the UAP issue is, since it will be coming sooner or later into be the predominant paradigm, it's very exciting that it holds the seeds to accelerate these issues around latent potentials, existential issues about who we are, a resurgence of legitimization of free energy portals, time travel, et cetera. As well as further fragmentation and deep state controlling the narrative, and the rich getting all the benefits and so forth. So it's a mixed bag, but there's definitely an extremely rich tapestry of positive implications. And we can wait till that actually happens, but if we get ahead of the curve a little bit, maybe we can, both through intention and tangible actions, help make these good things more likely. And as I say, build barriers to the bad things, which mostly have to do with the military industrial complex, not to go off the deep end on conspiracy theories, but there's, a lot there. And Dolan has spoken to that, as have many others. So public opinion matters.
Exactly. And as you may know, this is one reason why New Paradigm Institute is very actively working to create what we're calling Citizens for Disclosure groups around the country, and in fact internationally, to start focusing on the 2024 election and how we can make this issue an electoral issue. So, I mean, just imagine in one of the debates between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, one of the questions is, what do you believe about the UAP? What's your position on disclosure? We want the senators, the people running for Congress, to all be on record about this UAP disclosure momentum, because there's an extraordinary amount that's happening. And the public now is emerging as a player as disclosure begins to take place. We're no longer excluded as we were until last December, really. We're now in the game, and we need to flex our muscles and ensure that the momentum continues to build. And so this is one reason why we wanted to have you on, because I think that your polling is really insightful in terms of the relationship between knowledge and how you evaluate the phenomenon, which means that we've got a lot of work to do. That's one reason why we talk about it a lot at Humanity Rising. We encourage people to talk about it with their family, with their friends, with their community, just to get the word out there. Because as you indicate, there are books, there are documentaries, there's YouTubes, there's programs like yours that are just out there and available. So we're in a new world, and the public needs to understand that and start to play the role that the public must play for a viable democracy, particularly in this matter.
For sure. Yeah.
So let's just turn to a couple of technical questions. Mark Talbert in the chat was asking what you understand to be the hybrid phenomenon. And that's maybe a little bit outside your remit, but based on what you know, how would you describe a hybrid?
So there's the strong and the weak claims. The weakest claim is that way in the distant past, our DNA is composed of a mix of various types of non-human intelligence, and that even if you move to a stronger claim, and that even at key points in our history, there's been an injection of, a missing gene or something like that. So, those are the more distant claims. Then you move up to the stronger claims that there are hybrids actively embedded in our society. I mean, I know a woman who feels very strongly she is a hybrid. And so you move, to that, to all the way to the young woman that I featured in the clip that, claims she's part of a refertilization program, and that she's been impregnated, and the early stages of the fetus have been removed, and birthed on ships, and people claim that they've seen visions of these. It's straight out of science fiction. So it moves all the way from the extreme Among Us to, yeah, probably is, extremely likely that, our DNA was, influenced by a mix further on. So that's the whole spectrum. And I have no independent expertise around that. If you ask my opinion, I would say it's entirely plausible that we have hybrids among us. And look at Robert Bigelow on 60 Minutes. He said they're here now, right? And so a lot of people that are science oriented, if you are, and evidence based, they see it. Now you move into things like big UFOs implanted under the ice cap of Antarctica and stuff. Maybe, I wouldn't call that absurd, but I wouldn't put that in the plausible category for me currently.
Right. That's very interesting. And you may know Richard Dolan is writing his new opus, which apparently is some 600-700 pages long, on what he calls USOs, unidentified submerged objects, so that the UFO phenomenon in the oceans and in the lakes is an extraordinarily well-documented one, but one that has been largely out of public view because we're looking up at the UFOs in the sky. So the plausibility.
I'm definitely up with that. I mean, I have on this website, What's Up with UFOs, we have a number of even video clips of them appearing and disappearing underwater, and being tracked at 100 knots and stuff. There's even stuff around Skinwalker Ranch of going through mesas, disappearing into a mesa and popping out, which is even the more extreme version. But if the technology is some kind of dematerializing field, the medium doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. Now, Janice Hall is also asking a question that comes up about how we understand the extraterrestrial beings in terms of, are they all benign? Do we have reason to be concerned? Based on what you and Sean have garnered about this phenomenon, how would you describe the presence of the extraterrestrials in terms of whether, from a human point of view, we can be open-hearted and positive that they have our best intents at heart, or whether we should be concerned that in some way they're
Right.
Transactional, colonial, and going to treat us like the Americans and the Europeans treated the rest of the world as we colonized. What's your current, shall we say, position on that?
So if we look at the research, some of the implications were that there at least some of the species had, to put it in a nice way, their interests weren't aligned with humanity. Maybe they weren't malevolent, they just don't care. Just like, us looking at an anthill, maybe we step on it, we didn't want to harm the ants, but we don't really care about them. So, the No More group or everybody that took the survey said, if that happened, that would be really bad. That would be a really bad thing. But we don't know. Nobody was certain. That's just one of the key uncertainties, the range of their intentions. I think there are people that, like Stephen Greer, who has had consistently positive direct experience with UAPs that didn't, if I'm current on his thinking, categorically denies that there's any negative energy there. But there are reports, and the reptilians are kind of scary. And there are reports of certainly indifference or harm. And probably the reality is there's a number of species with a number of motivations. And the vast majority seems to care about humanity, care about our involvement with nuclear weapons, wants us to take care of the planet. Why they would want to do that, we could speculate on. There's a range of possibilities, but you couldn't rule out some negative things. I'll also say that the people that have had, and there's been research on this, free research and so forth, the people that have had abduction experiences have been maybe traumatized, but the free research shows that 85% of them eventually considered a positive experience, like a near-death experience. Maybe many similarities between abduction experiences and near-death experiences, which ultimately were positive. It changed their life.
That's fascinating. I hadn't thought that connection before, but
Yeah.
you're right. There's fear of death, and then the people that go through it have an absolutely transformational experience that completely reworks their understanding of both life and death. Say more about that. That's a fascinating comparison.
Yeah. So both are traumatic. Both tend to be characterized by moving toward a light. Both tend to be very uncomfortable. But afterwards, both NDEs and many experiencers have a whole new outlook on reality, are more optimistic, about don't really fear death that much, see the veil being thinner, have psychic abilities. And in the abduction experiences, and this is another area of research that's coming to the fore, have one of the major effects from abductions comes after the fact. They scramble the electronics in their house. The door openers don't work. Their internet goes down. They blow light bulbs. I mean, there's a whole medical aspect to this. But the free research, and Sean is part of a group to update the research. The free research is 85% consider that it, in retrospect, a positive, life-expanding experience.
Yeah. Yeah. The net of the net is positive for
the net of the net. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it's also true that the consensus of at least the information we have is that the people that have reported communication with the extraterrestrials, like those children in Zimbabwe, report that the ETs communicate that humanity needs to stop being so destructive to one another and to the environment. And so there is that data as well.
Yes, and that's one of the credible implications that the No More group has. The message, take care of the planet. They say that's very positive, and we believe that passes our, that's highly plausible.
Yeah. Well, this has been fascinating. One other question from Di Claus is around this universal language that you were talking about from Diane Pasulka's book Encounter. Say more about what you know about the universal language. That's a fascinating thing that the people, the little kids being born, have a capacity to grok the universal language. Say more about that.
I was totally fascinated by it, and I'd like to learn more too. And I can't say more about it without risk of misstating it. It's just that uh, uh, I'm trying to recall the symbols and the sounds. They and again, Diana is writing about this as she interviews someone. So this anthropologist or whoever is doing it, they drew an alphabet from natural sounds in our environment, animal sounds, sounds of nature, basically a vocabulary generated by Mother Earth and Gaia herself.
Let's see. That's
And
the universal language, is the
yeah,
natural sounds of nature which form the alphabet.
yes,
Fascinating.
yeah.
Fascinating. Well,
It's terrific. That's why we recommend Encounters as one of the 5 books.
yeah.
Yeah.
I've got it actually on my bookshelf in Washington. I haven't read it yet, but that'll be my next one
Yeah.
based on this. Based on this. This is so because if we can, that's the mother tongue. That's
That's
the language of
that's
nature.
that's the mother tongue. And if you then combine that with the collective field in the Gaia noosphere hypothesis, or collective fields of intelligence moving around, you're starting to probably get closer to a more valid and optimistic model of reality.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that becomes then if we could pull it off, that becomes then the existential grounding of a whole new world order that would
That takes you
naturally
toward
emerge.
the we're all one thing.
Yeah,
You can't just
exactly.
leap there.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
it's always back to Chekhov, it's drop by drop that we squeeze the slave out of ourselves. We long for the completion, but
Yeah.
there's something in us of such torpitude that it's only drop by drop that we get there. It's really really
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. And that's the other good thing about looking at the positive implications of disclosure is the more specific, we all know about how you set intentions and, so forth. So the more the collective starts to hold these things as not just possibilities, but the specific dimensions of the new reality, rather than, just this is the elements of humanity rising.
Yes.
These are the specific nodes and vehicles for humanity rising. And to the extent that we all hold them in our hearts and imagination, in the land of woo-woo and, non subtle realms, they get activated there first.
Yeah. Beautifully put. Beautifully put. So last question, Tom, and thank you so much. This has been extraordinarily illuminating and inspiring. To me personally, just thinking about this connection between the ET experience and the near-death experience and this research on the universal language. That's beautiful to bring in for our community. So here we are, the end of January 2024. We have the legislation behind us. We still have the complications around disclosure. What would you recommend for our community? What are some practical things that you would recommend people do specifically to either prepare themselves or to educate themselves or to support the disclosure process from your vantage point? What would you recommend?
So I would piggyback on, so I would focus on the government aspect of it. And so I would take the action that Danny Sheehan has on his website. And if you want something specific, find out who's on the Senate Intelligence Committee. And so, for example, I'm in Colorado, and Mike Bennett Senator Bennett's on my, so you can write to him and say, please, we favor, disclosure and so put pressure on the Senate Intelligence Committee if you're in a state where one of the members is a constituent. So that's that. And then the other thing I would say is, try to reach outside the bubble with some of the lines of arguments that I've, presented. The terminology, the levels of plausibility, you're not a tin-headed conspiracy person. There's lots of stuff you don't believe in, but, look at the evidence we have, not the evidence we don't have. I've laid out 5 or 6 arguments that are designed to kind of work with the people that are unengaged and, just try that and spend 2 hours on the resource list. Watch a couple of documentaries, get one of the books,
Exactly.
something off the list. There's lots of good stuff out there.
Yeah. The truth will make us free.
The truth will make us free, and the toothpaste isn't going back in the tube.
Tom, this has been brilliant. I really, really want to acknowledge everything that you've been doing with Sean and others, of course, and it's been made very real today, and I really appreciate it. And Tom is going to join the after chat, everyone. So if you want to spend more time with Tom, he's going to make himself available. You'll see the link in the chat box. You also received it in your Zoom reminder. Those of you who are regular viewers on Humanity Rising. And we'll be bringing more next week on this issue because I think Tom and I and many others believe that this disclosure issue is the most important issue, certainly in our lifetime, because it holds the most potential for the kind of transformation of what it means to be human that's available to us at our current stage of development. We're now entering into our ET moment. And as Tom says, the toothpaste is out of the tube.
Yeah.
And the citizens now have to educate themselves and put pressure to animate our democracy. So, Tom, you're on the front lines, and I thank you for it.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you here tomorrow for a discussion on innovative education, which is at the heart of what we need to now do for the world and for the ET moment that we are entering. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tom. See you tomorrow.